All right, good morning. Thanks, Stu. And thanks, John, for your presentation. It's great to have Biosecurity New Zealand here and to have that picture of the biosecurity system. I'm normally talking about the pathway plan, at least in the last few months. I've been talking about that a lot. I'm not talking about that today, but it is good to see that system and have that context that I like that analogy of the series of nets and not the wall at the border keeping things out. And also the point you made about 30 responses at any one time. I mean, that's a lot. And some of those would affect the plant sector, I'm sure. So yeah, there's a lot going on in that space. So I was just going to talk a bit about GIA. Where are we? And some of the projects that we're doing in this space. Don't want to press it too many times, it's going to... Oh, yeah, here we go. So, and provide this wider context that what we're doing for this kiwifruit specific research is a really important piece of the puzzle, but it is just a small piece of the puzzle. So if we use BMSB as an example, and that's what we've got on this slide, we can see that there's a lot going on and there's a multi-layered approach to research in particular. So with BMSB, when it arrived in the US in particular in the early 2000s, we saw a lot of research going on. They had this new pest to deal with. There was this big program of research underway. They had the Stop BMSB program. I think it had about 18 different universities and research organisations working together. And they were addressing some of these fundamental knowledge gaps associated with the pest. So from a New Zealand perspective, it's really important that we're tied into that work that's going on, and also in Asia and its native range, and in Europe as well. And through Nursery and the ZGS program, we've got people like Shane here who's doing a lot of work in these other areas, so we can draw off that knowledge. So that linkage is really important. We've heard about John talking now about what's happening from Biosecurity New Zealand and the MPI at that national level preparedness. And Dave Toulon's also going to talk about the B3 Better Border Biosecurity Program, what's going on through our own Crown research organisations. And then I'll talk about this GIA space, which is how we work in partnership. So all of that is going on, and then what we do with KVH and Nursery is look to see where these kiwifruit specific gaps are that we need to pick up in this portfolio. So I thought that some of that context might be quite useful. So GIA is growing. I think each year we probably give a number of how many signatories we have. We were the first back in 2014, and I think we're up to 24 now. Hopefully that's the right number. It is always changing. But you can see from here, we've got the animal sectors, we've got forestry, aquaculture's on board, and of course MPI. So one of the real strengths of it is that it's one of the only forums, or possibly the only forum, where you have all these sectors and MPI together sitting around the table. And for us, it's particularly powerful and of importance because the focus is biosecurity. So we do work with all these sectors in some form, but we mostly work with the plant sectors which are shown here. So we do a lot of work. This is where we have the most common interest, and we do have initiatives with other plant sectors, such as the development of a nursery biosecurity standard, which is similar to what we've done with our Kiwifruit plant certification scheme, but the idea being it would roll out across other horticultural sectors and forestry and regional councils, DOC, etc. as well. We also have groups or councils which focus on some of our most specific and high-risk organisms, which we have in common. And of particular interest would be the brown marmorated stink bug, I'm sure. So this is a list of some of the current projects that are going on at the moment. Early detection is absolutely key for this pest, and public awareness. John talked about passive surveillance. Having the public aware that this is a pest they need to look out for. We invest a lot in this public awareness campaign. Surveillance trapping, I think Elise is talking about this a bit later. This is something new that we're rolling out and trialling for BMSB on a bit of a pilot scale. Having response plans in place. What would we do if it gets here? What chemical control tools would we use? And exploring what other options there might be. Can we use lower rates or different chemical control tools? And then, of course, our biocontrol agent, the Samurai Wasp. A couple of years ago, we did get EPA approval to use this if we got an incursion in New Zealand, but that's by no means the end of that work program. We've developed a release program, but we still have so many knowledge gaps on how we would actually use it. So we'll have Gonzalo talking a bit more about some of the work he's been doing to refine and optimise our knowledge of it. How far would it actually go to find out a BMSB egg, and how many eggs can it parasitise in its lifetime? All that sort of thing to inform how many we might actually need to release. And of course, where do we source these wasps from? And how do we rear them, particularly given that we don't have brown marmorated stinkbug in New Zealand? So those are some of the work that's going on there. And the other, and this is an example of the new comms material coming out for that public awareness campaign, and just trying to get the public attention that this is a pest to be worried about, and that call to action if you see it. So fruit fly being the other really significant threat to our industry. And this program's been going on a lot longer. John did talk about this. One of the first things we did as a council was to get an independent and international panel to review our current surveillance program. They found that it was world-class and it was fit for purpose, but there was a number of things that we could consider as recommendations just to really optimise and look for efficiencies. So contingency planning, what other insecticides should we have up our sleeve in case we were to use access to our main ones? What sort of tools should we look at for a large-scale response if it was too big for our current system to handle? Can we create efficiencies in our trapping system by combining lures into a single trap or using automated traps? So rather than having people check them every 2 weeks, having some sort of computerised system to provide instant notification. Female trapping, we get asked about that a lot. Why do the traps only detect males? And certainly there is a big program of work in Australia going on with the females, which we are linked into there. And the other really interesting one is, where do these incursions come from? And there's an isotope analysis program where you can look at to see where these flies might have come from, both in a country, but specific regions within that country. Cool. So then the final one is work that we do in partnership with MPI specific to the kiwifruit sector. So this was the big focus of last year's Biosecurity Day. Not such a big focus this year, we're covering other topics. But I thought I would just mention that last year we had Professor Assolino come over. He talked a lot about Ceratocystis, and we had a session following that workshop to develop some research and identify what knowledge gaps we needed to pursue. We've got a new project that's underway in partnership with MPI going for 3 years to address a lot of those knowledge gaps. And the other one is a Phytophthora survey to better understand what Phytophthora species we actually have in New Zealand in our orchards, so that if we get a new detection, we can better understand if it actually is a new organism or if it's something we just didn't know about. Cool, thanks a lot.